welcome back to Quick Concepts. Today we are still dealing with some geometry issues. We're going to talk today about area. So the whole meaning behind area is covering a two-dimensional figure. So the covering of a two-dimensional figure. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have a rectangle. The two dimensions we're dealing with, so this would be the area of a rectangle, is equal to length times width. So this being your length, this being your width. So if we did length times width, it would cover the whole area of the rectangle. So this is something that you want to have on your reference card. So let's talk about just some different shapes. So area of a square. And you could, for a square and a rectangle, it's pretty much the same thing, but some people just say side squared because they know that all the sides are the same. So you're just going to multiply a side by a side for the square. Now, if you're talking about a triangle, the area of a triangle, you've got a little bit of a different formula. So again, you want to make sure you are getting the correct formula down. This is 1/2 base times height. Now be careful, this is what we call the true height, which is this height. This here is what you call the slant height, so you're not using that, you're using that true height, and this would be your base along the bottom here. So that's another formula that you would want to put on your card. About area of a circle would be next. So the area of a circle would be pi times the radius squared. And then in the same vein, the area of a semicircle would essentially be the same thing divided by 2. So this would be area is equal to pi r squared divided by 2. Okay, so we've covered that. We've covered a semicircle. And remember, you guys, like a lot of times you will get things that have multiple shapes in them. So for instance, let's say I got something that looked like this. Let's say this was 8, this was 3. No, let's make this 6, and this 3. So essentially what I have here is I have a rectangle, which is length times width, and I have a semicircle, which is pi r squared divided by 2. So when you're given something like this, you want to take a step back and say, okay, my total area is going to be the area of a rectangle added to the area of a semicircle. And then that way, you're just you're taking smaller parts. So we can look up, say, okay, well, what's the area of a rectangle? We know it's length times width. And then what's the area of a semicircle? We know it's pi r squared divided by 2. So do you see how we're kind of taking a very large problem and breaking it up into small pieces? So let's try, our length is going to be 8. It's always the larger or longer portion of the rectangle. And then the radius here is 3. And now we're just ready to work out our problem. We have 48 plus 9 pi over 2. Remember, guys, order of operations always, always, always. So on this one right here, I would say 9 times pi, hit enter, and divided by 2. So this is going to be 14.14. And then if I just add a 48 to it, I get 62.14, and we'll say that the units are going to be in feet. So this is feet squared. Now that's another thing you need to understand, that when you're dealing with area, this is two dimensions. So it's going to be a square answer, meaning feet squared, inches squared, because you are multiplying two dimensions. This would be a length of inches, or excuse me, of feet, times a width of feet, times r, which is feet squared. So that's something really good to keep in mind. So let's try a different one. Let's try something with 3 shapes to it. So let's say we have something that looks like this. And a lot of times they won't break the shapes up for you. So you really need to understand that sometimes you have to add those dotted line yourself. So this is going to be, let's say this is a 6, this is a 3, this is an 8, And this is a 5 and a 5. So if we look at the total area, it says what is the area of this, and we'll say it's in meters. So your total area is going to be 3 parts here. We're going to have the area of a triangle plus the area of a rectangle plus the area of a semicircle. So then you would go and you would write down the formulas to each of these. Do you see how we're just making it into smaller parts just to make things a little bit more easy? So the base of the triangle is 8 and the height of the triangle is 6. The length of the rectangle is 6 and the width is 5. And the radius of the semicircle is 3. So half of 8 is 4. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 30 plus 9 pi over 2. So this will be 54 plus 9 pi over 2. And again, you would just grab your calculator. You would do the 9 pi over 2 first. So this would be 9 times pi equals divided by 2, which is going to be 14.14. And then, of course, just adding it to that 54 is going to give you about 68.14. And this is meters squared because it's an area. Okay, so that is it for area.